Hey guys, I'm Nick,
And I'm Tony.
and we're the Sicilian brothers.
And today we are here with our boss, my mentor, a really good friend of mine, Mike Hanna at Investmark Mortgage.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that intro. Yes, it's Mike Hanna with Investmark Mortgage.
And we are here to talk about appraisal animosity and what basically what everyone's hang up is with getting an appraisal. If you were to do a deal today, what's the first thing you would say? Obviously, you would say get an appraisal, but why? The number one answer to why do I need an appraisal?
The biggest reason is, I'd say there's three reasons, right? But the number one reason is the square footage is wrong on the tax records over 20% of the time.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. So we actually took 100 random loans out of our system, just did a search and said, all these through this certain date, pulled 100 loans, went through all the tax records, went through all the appraisals, and lined up the square footage in a spreadsheet. And it was 21% of those loans were off on square footage. So just that by itself.
Now, when you say off, do you mean the house was actually bigger or smaller?
Yes.
Yep. So the answer is yes, it was either bigger or smaller.
Right. 35% of the time, it was off by more than 10%. So when you think about that, you may think, well, those numbers, that's not really that much. But when you're off by 20%, if you're off in the wrong direction, obviously if it's bigger, it's in most cases, it's going to be in most cases. But a lot of times when you have conversions and things that people think add more value to the property that really don't, but they show up on the tax records as additional square footage, it doesn't have the same impact on the value. So taking the right approach when you're evaluating a deal is something that you need to leave that up to a professional to do instead of trying to do that yourself. And the reason why is that's what they're trained to do, right? Appraisers are trained to go out to the property, measure the property, make sure that the square footage is correct. But the reason why I wanted to do this and why we're doing this, this video for everybody is there's this reluctance with a lot of new investors to get an appraisal.
Yeah.
They don't want to get it. They think that it's going to take too long.
So that's the number one. I think
number one, right?
In today's climate,
It's
timing,
time, money, and
access.
It's going to affect them in a lower value.
Right, but that's a total myth.
And
we can.
But what?
explain
Yeah.
that.
So to tap on that is because we had someone I actually referred over to Paul, and I said, hey, this person, they know us, they met us at the event, they want us to do a loan for them, but they can't get access to the house, so they're going to buy it sight unseen.
Right.
And
Huge mistake.
And can I chuckle because I do it all. What is
We can talk about that too.
Exactly,
You
right.
do it because you have years and years of expertise and do hundreds and hundreds of deals, and you do 100 deals a year. There's a difference between you doing that and somebody else because you have not only the economies of scale, the efficiency with the crews and everything you have set up. Most investors don't have that, right? Plus, you have the ability to drive by and look at a house, and you can tell, oh, wait, this does have a conversion. I'm going to back out this much square footage.
Yep.
And you can do some adjustments yourself and make a ballpark. And even if you're wrong, you're probably still going to be okay
within
most cases
within my margin of error.
right?
Yeah.
But still, for the new guy, for the new investor that's out there, new guy or gal. That's a huge risk that they're taking because if you're wrong on the square footage, you can lose a lot of money. That's the thing we need to emphasize. Well, why do we want to get an appraisal? Because you don't want to lose money. You want to make money in your deal. And I can give you a bunch of examples where we went out, did an appraisal. Appraisal came back at 300 or 400 square feet smaller than the tax records. Tax records are showing like 1,850 square feet, and it comes back at 1,500 square feet.
How bad is a couple hundred square feet at $200 a square foot? That's not a lot of profit.
Oh yeah, no, that's not a lot. That's your whole profit in the deal, right? And so the good news with that is when we see that, many times the investor can go back and retrade that deal.
Yeah.
They say, oh, well, the market's so hot right now, so no one's going to do that. It's like, look, there are other deals. Just walk away from that deal, move on to the next one, because because it's not what you were buying, right? You were buying a house that you thought was 1,850 square feet, and it's not.
Right.
It's much smaller, and that's gonna impact your value.
You mentioned a word, risk, and we get this and back when you were selling the loans yourself. I mean, you still talk to people about doing loans, but when you're on the phone with a customer and they're trying to get you to buy their loan, right? They're trying to sell you on, hey, loan me this money. They say, well, I'm taking all the risk, right? Like
Right.
I'm calling you, Mike Hanna, to loan
Right.
me money for this
Right.
property, and I'm willing to go and do all the repairs, and I think it's a great deal. I'm the one Mike, I'm taking all this risk. What do you got to lose?
Right. Well,
Mike, why can't you just loan me the money? It's all on me, man. It's in my name. I own the property. Well,
This was a call. The woman wanted her rehab funds up front. And that's what she was saying. I'm taking all the risk by fronting the first draw. I was like, well, you're just using us as a piggy bank, wherever you're doing, right? That's why we don't front it, because you can just take that money, run to Vegas. What's stopping you?
right.
and I think it's funny. Everyone says, well, I'm taking all the risk, Mike.
Right.
Why do you need an appraisal? I'm telling you, or, you know.
We're both taking risk in the deal, right? As a lender, you're always taking on the risk. So that's why we loan at 70%, right, of the ARV, and not 80 or 85% of the ARV, right?
Yeah.
So both of us are taking risks. So both of us want protection, right? Both of us we want the same thing. Like, I want you as the investor to be successful. I want you to make money in the deal. I don't want you to go into a deal and then lose money, or you say, oh, wow, I got into this deal, the square footage was totally wrong, and now I'm going to lose money. So I didn't bring that much money to closing. I'm just going to walk away because I'm going to lose more if I continue on. Well, the lender obviously doesn't want that, right? And you don't want that as an investor. So it's better. The best money you spend in a deal is the $450 you spend on an appraisal.
Absolutely.
Which is number two. That's the other thing that that an investor says, well, I don't really want to spend the money. And so you have these other lenders that are advertising and promoting and selling on the fact that, hey, we don't require an appraisal. We just run our own comps. And it's like, that's super dangerous, because number one, the tax records could be wrong on square footage. Number two, you could be using the wrong comps. And a lot of them say, oh no, I know how to run comps. It's like, really, are you sure you're running the right comps, not crossing a major road? You're staying within the subdivision. You're looking at a similar style home, similar year build, similar square footage, similar school district. I mean, you're checking all those things. And then what about the obsolescence? What about external influences? And when I hammered somebody on that just recently, they're like, well, what is that? Like, well, if you have to walk into a lot of these investor deals are investor deals because they've got something quirky about them.
Yeah.
Especially in this kind of market, right? Like, you have to walk from one bedroom to get into the next bedroom. Okay, that's functional obsolescence. That's going to take off. That's going to be an adjustment on the appraisal, on the value of the property, because of that factor.
Yeah.
How about external influences, like you back up to commercial property? You're across the street from a busy high school. You side to a 4-lane through street, right? Or you're next to a water tower. Or maybe you back up to railroad tracks. I mean, these are all things that we see in these deals that have we're talking, sometimes 10, 15, 20% adjustment on the value because the property has one of those influences.
Yeah.
So those are things that most hard money lenders that don't require appraisals, you can't really see that stuff online. I mean, you can a little bit on Google, but you really need to drive the comps, which is one of the things the appraiser does when they go out there, is they're going to drive each one of the comps and see that they are comparing apples to apples.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that I guess it's a misconception is because there are, in today's information age, there are plenty of websites and sources for
Zillow.
information. Whether it's the big ones that we know of, Zillow and things like that, but
right.
there are premium services that you could pay for a subscription for,
Right.
to get comps.
Right.
Back probably when we both started, none of these things existed.
Right.
There
there were a couple back in the day,
but they weren't there, and
they weren't as sophisticated as they are now.
But the crazy thing is, as sophisticated as they are now, the data is still not always right. So you're never going to get, unless you are a realtor or have access to MLS like an appraiser, you don't, or you're not guaranteed to get the right data, right? So there are some, bobscompingservice.com. It's not a real website, but there are people that send us these reports, and then I will go and look at my comps because I can. I do not have access to MLS, but my friend will send me the comps that I think or he thinks that I will want to use. When I look at those, the data is not accurate because they're pulling data from the third party from MLS, but it might not, right? So my point is that part of getting the appraisal is getting the right data.
Yes.
In addition to just square footage, right? It's sold dates, it's 2 bedrooms to 1 bedroom, right? So something might populate as a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, but it's really a 3-bedroom, 2 bath, or vice versa. It'll say it's a 3-bedroom, 2 bath, but it, like you said, it might not be a real 3-bedroom. Right.
My favorite's when they always say, well, next door just sold for X, right? They use next door just sold for X, right? And they use some crazy number.
And next door was a 2-story.
But next door is not a comp, right?
Not necessarily.
It did help your market. It helped your neighborhood go up, right? It might improve the value, but you can't use that as a comp. So you're not going to get that dollar for dollar.
No, you can use it. But it might not.
Yes,
actually, there might be an adjustment.
Yes, that's my
what
point.
You're
right.
getting at.
Yeah. So that's my point. It's not a true comparable.
Well, it could be.
Item
but
to
you need to vet it. Like
yes,
that's
my point.
It
it's not guaranteed to be just because it is next door. It's not automatically.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. So let's just talk about these two things because it's really important. One, $450. If that's going to break your deal to spend that on appraisal, it wasn't a deal, guys. You need to because it's almost like an insurance policy, right? You buy this to know, hey, is the square footage right? Are we looking at the right comps? Is there some kind of influence that's going to impact the value? What is the appraiser going to do in terms of adjustments to get this value right? And we see it. I mean, we see it literally all the time where there's something a little bit quirky about each one of these investor deals, right? There's always something, right? And then
that's
when the value comes back, I mean, yeah, a lot of times you are looking at the right comps and the value was spot on, but many times it's not, and you need to be cautious of that because even if you're off a little bit, like you've got a $300,000 ARV, or you think the ARV is $300,000, and it actually comes in at $287. Well, that could blow a deal.
That's $13,000.
$13,000 can blow a deal,
Yeah.
right? Especially if you thought, well, I'm going to make, I'll take my $20,000 on this deal. It's going to be tight, but well, no, now you're at $7,000 profit in the deal, and is that really a deal?
But Mike, we're in an appreciating market.
No.
I'm gonna get a 10% in 12 months when I sell the house.
We just talked about risk, right? So I think that goes in line with risk, and nobody has a crystal ball and trying to predict the future.
Yeah.
But so getting back to, it's going to be faster if I don't do an appraisal. I'll be able to close faster. No, not if you're working with a lender like us. And this is not just to promote us. I mean, any lender that does appraisals is probably working with an appraiser that's really good, that will move them to the top of the list to get the appraisal done. Now you say, well, why would they move to the top of the list? Here's why. Because most appraisers, they're not just doing appraisal work for hard money lenders. They're doing appraisal work for conforming, conventional lenders, lots of other lenders. And do you know when they get paid on those appraisals? They
30,
get
60
30,
days,
60, 90, 120 days. When do they get paid on a hard money appraisal?
That day.
They get paid that day.
Within
They get
hours.
paid the day they go out. So they're like, oh, if I'm getting paid the day I go out,
Yeah.
then I'm moving that order straight to the front of the line. So that's a big misconception that.
Do you think one of the other things that people's concern is that you as the lender are paying your appraiser or having I'm coming to you for a loan. You're going to call Bob. Bob's going to do the appraisal for you.
Right.
And I'm paying for it, but
Right.
you're telling Bob to appraise it for less so that your risk is lower.
No. I mean, maybe some lenders do that. I mean, we have never done that.
Right. But do you think that that's something that people
A misconception.
worry? Right. It's a misconception.
I think there probably is some of that out there. I think you have to go with a lender that you trust that's not going to do that. And a lot of times, if it comes in, every investor needs to be able to run their own comps and look at it and get a feel, and not just take the wholesaler's word for what the value is, right? Because that's one of the big things that investors, they say, well, I know that the value is this because wholesaler told me, right? It's worth $200,000. Okay, well, have your comps, look at those, be able to run your own comps, get a realtor friend or somebody that can help you if you can't do that yourself.
Yeah.
But at least know that if it comes in at a significantly lower amount from the lender, that's going to like require you to bring more money to closing or back out of the deal, then try to understand why. Ask the question, well, why did that happen? And in cases where that's happened with our appraisers, with our the appraisals that we've gotten for our investor clients, we could put the appraiser, they're happy to get on the phone and explain it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, here's why it came in lower.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no, we don't want the appraisal to be manipulated either way.
In either direction.
Because right now, it's if you look at what's going on in the market with the trend, with this upward trend, a lot of times the appraisers, they have to almost do some kind of forecasting for value because they're seeing these values going up and there's no comps in that market. And it's like, well, this could go up another 5% or 10% or whatever. But you as the individual that are not doing this every day, you the individual investor, you're not going to know that, right? You're not. I mean, the appraiser knows that because they know the market, right? The only other person that knows the market better is either somebody who lives in the subdivision and really tracks all this stuff, or a realtor that works that neighborhood, works that area.
Literally farms that pocket.
If they farm that area, they know everything about every one of those houses. That's why an appraiser will call up a realtor and say, I'm struggling with this value. I think it's this because they have these amenities and they have this and this. And what do you think?
That's another, that word that you just said, amenities, is huge. Because especially in some of the areas that people flip in DFW, they're in subdivisions that might have an HOA with, hey, this HOA offers, free pool with a water park, there are some factors to certain subdivisions that you might not know, right? I mean, if you're just
the house too, the amenities of the house, as well as the neighborhood, the subdivision.
I mean, the one thing that always comes to mind for me is like non-conforming, right? So if they converted it to a duplex, if they had another shed on there, they might not be able to get back-end financing if they're doing a buy and hold. If they're trying to do burring or something, right? If they didn't catch that on the front side by doing appraisal, they're going to skip it.
Well, think about this.
It's going to shoot them in the foot because they got all the way through their rehab, right?
So
like in Garland,
and they didn't permit something, yeah.
So in Garland, if you had a conversion and it wasn't permitted, they'll make you put that garage back into a garage, right? Or whatever it is, right?
And you didn't get the appraisal on the front end, so you wouldn't have. So which the appraisal will note that if there's an unpermitted improvement, they will note that in the appraisal. Or the other. Okay, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to go through this example of last week. We saw that deal.
Yep.
It was a house, and I think it's a house and a duplex in one improvement. And our appraiser said, "I can't appraise this." And we're like, "Why can't you appraise?" Well, because there are no comps that are comparable to the subject property, meaning he can't find any data. So he just backed away from it and said, "Look, it either has to be a house, or it has to be a duplex.
But it can't be both.
It can't be both." And if you're a lender that says, "Oh, well, we're just going to look at single family comps," well, guess what? The investor that does that deal, they're going to sell that property or they're going to try to refinance it. And in most cases, if they're going with a conventional or conforming lender, it's going to have to get an appraisal. Well, that appraiser that goes out there is going to have the same experience, and then somebody's going to get stuck with that deal, and it's not going to get financed. So that's the risk you take on the back end. So you're an investor. You don't want to get an appraisal. You do some deal. It's off on square footage, or your lender or you ran the wrong comps, or you think you can pick these comps from across the street, which you can't, or across the subdivision, which you can't, or it's got some external, influence or some kind of obsolescence that's going to prevent the value from being what you think it is, but you don't know that, right? And then you get in the deal, and then you turn around and try to sell it. Well, now you're stuck in it, and don't think that hasn't happened to a number of investors.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and then you're waiting around trying to, maybe the value will go up enough to where I can offset, or I got to take a loss to sell this thing, because that's usually what happens is you're taking a loss on it.
And on your, oddly enough, on your side of the table as the lender, you're looking at it as, man, I didn't want, you don't want me to get hurt. Right. And then if let's just say I'm flipping it, but also let's just say I want to hold it and I'm going to nick for the back end financing, the refinance to pay off the hard money.
Right.
Nick wants to get the deal done. He wants to help me get it into my portfolio. And what if we can't? What happens to me, the investor? Well, I either am going to get foreclosed on, or you're going to have to do some sort of extension, or right, and so your costs start to go up. And
Right.
again, every day that you hold a house is risk, and
Right.
every day that you hold a house once it's rehabbed, the risk is like double, right? And so that's why it's funny whenever people are flipping houses, and I'm like, just finish it, just sell it for that little bit of a
Right.
discount, right?
Well, you're also not. You just made the switch from profit to loss.
Right.
Like that is once the rehab's done, you are no longer making. You're not improving that profit anymore. You're just spending money on lawn care that you don't need. It's extra
Right.
expenses. So you're
Spending
literally
money on
just
utilities,
eating away.
spending money on insurance, spending money on prorated property taxes, and you're spending money with your lender. You've got to eliminate that as quickly as possible. That's what we talk about on the website, the 5 costs investors typically forget.
Absolutely.
That's a great video for everybody to go watch because you can see, you'll be able to see that. And
Absolutely.
I mean, I had one person. They waited 4 months after I priced them out. They waited an additional 4 months just so they could get a smaller origination, right? But because they needed 6 months seasoning, and I'm like, you just wasted that money by holding it.
You held it for 4
you just
extra
shot
months.
yourself in the
yeah,
foot.
just
Right.
because you didn't
Think of
want to
the
pay
cost.
an extra point or
Yeah.
two or whatever it is. Meanwhile, that money accumulated to the equivalent, right? But in their brain, they saw it in a different other because there's
They're getting a cheaper product.
yeah,
I'm like,
well,
you just
well,
you just
there's a
waited.
difference between the perceived savings as compared to savings, right? The perceived savings is, hey, 4 months goes by, I chipped away. Let's use 10 grand. 4 months goes by, I chipped away at $2,500 over 4 months. But in their mind, they thought they were saving 10 grand, but they didn't realize that they wasted the same amount of money by waiting it out and
by
paying
being
it
in it for 120 days
extra. Yeah. So
Right.
I think it's interesting. Some of the things that we talked about, and I know I'm sure you got some more stuff to
Well,
put out there.
he's still
But
got number 3. We're waiting on. He didn't finish his 1, 2, 3.
yeah,
right?
you're
Oh
only
yeah.
number 2.
Well, number 3 was the looking for obsolescence and external influences. So
And-
that was the third one.
And it kind of plays right into where I was going to go with that, because we threw a bunch of weird words out there. And so if you have some extra time,
Sure.
would you mind talking about some lingo, some jargon that we maybe not everybody
The last
uses.
one, some functional obsolescence, right? So what is that?
Okay. You have a house that has 3 bedrooms, but you got to walk in to get to one of the bedrooms. You have to walk through another bedroom. That's obsolete, right? That's functional obsolescence. Nobody wants to walk through one bedroom to get to another.
So that's no longer a 3-bedroom. It's now a 2-bedroom with an office, pretty much.
or a
It's
giant
actu-
closet.
It's,
right? Like
it's actually
that's-
what typically happens. Like in those situations that I've seen, it's like somebody had a baby, and so they put a wall in. They roomed up another. They put in another room by putting in a partition, and that became a bedroom, or they added onto the house as a bedroom. But they have to walk through the master to get to the baby's room, right? So that was the one that I saw, I don't know, a few years ago, and I'm like, oh wow, this is interesting.
I see them every day.
Right. Yeah. So you have to be able to fix that, to get rid of that obsolescence in order for a market buyer to say, okay, yeah, that's a real 3-bedroom, and I want to, I'm comfortable, moving forward with buying that.
So we got functional obsolescence. I think some other white elephant is right. So,
Right. I'll give you a great example of one. So there was this house online. It looked great. When you got to the property, it sided to railroad tracks on one side. It was across the street from some kind of commercial building or something. And then on the other side of it was a water tower. And you're like, okay, this is going to have a significant impact on the value. So if you're looking at that house and you're comparing it to other homes that are in the subdivision that are not impacted, they're in the middle of the subdivision. They're nowhere close to the tracks. And these, by the way, these were active railroad tracks. Not close to the tracks. They're not near that water tower. And they don't, they face another house,
Mm-hmm.
right? They don't face like a high school or a commercial building or whatever. Then those are going to be totally different values, right? Because think about it as you as the end buyer. Do you want to walk out your house and see an active railroad track, or do you want to hear that all night? That's what you're going to hear, Or
People don't really take into account what you can see from the front door, right? So like we get them all the time where people get them. They're a couple of streets off the highway, right off 30. And
Right.
you can literally walk out your front door and throw a rock and hit a highway.
well, you can hear 30 from your house, and you can be, pretty several streets deep into the subdivision before you stop hearing it,
Yeah.
right? Because it's loud. All the traffic going on there on a major highway.
Did you have a number that got docked or like a
Oh,
because
I
of
don't remember
those?
what
I
it
didn't know
was,
if you
but
remember
it-
that.
But and people ask it like, well, how much do I take off for that? Well, you have to go find a similar comp, and then look at. That's what an appraiser does, right? They're going to go look at similar comps. They're not going to pull ones from the subdivision unless they have to, and then they can make an adjustment, or they'll go look at other. And I'm not an appraiser, right? But I've read a lot of appraisals. I see a lot of appraisals all the time. But they're going to try to find something that has similar influence, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't have a track or railroad tracks next to it, or a water tower, but it has, it backs up to high tension power lines, or something that a lot of people don't want to live next to, right?
A deterring something that's
Some
going to
deterrence.
something
Right.
that's going to deter
An external influence.
Yeah,
Yep.
something that's going to deter someone from either buying or renting.
Right.
Well, they're just renting. People aren't going to care. Wrong, right? I mean,
no, they're going to care.
They're absolutely going to care. And if they don't care when they sign the lease and move in, but guess what? They can't sleep at night because the cars and the trucks and
Right.
whatever, or they're getting headaches. Who knows? They're going to move on you, right?
Right.
And so
Absolutely.
but
Or, you can still do one of those deals, and we're not saying don't do it. It's
Right.
just that you have to get the
the right
don't-
price adjustment,
right. Don't
Yeah.
pay $200,000 for a house that really should be like $165, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm making these numbers
Yes.
up, but you get the idea.
Yeah. Buy it with the right data.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that that's something that, because everyone's in a very positive, everyone's seeing an appreciation of numbers year over year, month over month. Hey, we're gonna, I think we posted something about not earnings, but the market reaction from 2020 to 2021, and we're going to see an
Right.
appreciation again, right? And
Right.
or we're projecting an appreciation.
Confirmation
And-
bias. That's pretty much what we're seeing.
What's confirmation bias?
So everything just keeps on going up, and nobody can fail.
Right.
So, you're
So
saying
even-
that, hey, you did great. Oh, you killed it. Oh man, I thought I was going to lose money, but I killed it still. Oh, I can't fail and keep. So when
So what is that called?
well, confirmation bias is a different thing. So it's like if something's wrong and you're troubleshooting and you say, I think it's, the impeller's fucked up, right? So, all right, I think it's the impeller. You think it's the impeller? And then everybody, but it wasn't, something completely different. But you only are focusing on that one thing, right? So that, anyway, keep going, sorry.
Yeah, so I think that sort of everyone's focused on a positive right now. Oh, we're seeing an appreciation. The rates are coming down, so the things are going to sell. This is definitely going to sell. Or I can get a lower interest, so I can, I'll make more money monthly, right? All that stuff, all that positive that's going on. No one's doing the fact checking. Hate that term, but
Yeah.
no one's doing right. I mean, if that's what
Right.
that's it. It's
That's
the
right,
fact
though.
checking.
Yep.
It's the hey, make sure that you're planning for the worst. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best, right? I mean, so I think I do it. We all fall victim to it. You're looking for the positive. Hey, why do I want to make this deal work? But at the rate that we do deals is very different than someone else who might do different. Right? You can't compare yourself to everyone because humans we have faulty values, right? We all have our faults.
Sure.
Whereas an appraisal, when you get it to fact check your numbers in the deal, you have a better chance of being right on the other end of it.
What this makes me think of is you strip out the emotion, right, when you get an appraisal, because you're emotionally tied. A lot of people make buying decisions because of emotion, right? That's why people buy.
Mm-hmm.
So real estate is no different, right? investors are very emotional about deals. And we try to tell them, hey, eliminate forget about your emotion in this deal. Just focus on the numbers, right? And the best way to focus on the numbers is get the appraisal back. Get a rehab estimate from somebody that's other than you put it together because you think you can get the numbers down to a number that's going to work. Don't try to do that. Get a professional to help you do that. Otherwise, move on to the next deal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're too emotionally tied to this deal and you've spent, the more time somebody spends in a deal, it's like they feel like they can't walk away from it, right? And you can't walk away from when you've put down, $5,000 or non-refundable earnest money. Although you probably need to if the numbers are way off. Mm-hmm. And if they're wrong, I mean, it's better to walk away from $5,000 than to get in a deal that you're going to be
30, 40.
you're going to lose a lot more money.
In some of our cases recently, it was over 100.
Oh my gosh!
Right,
yeah,
and so
yes,
there are different reasons, but
way
but
different.
They
totally
still
different scenario.
Lost, right?
Right,
and they did everything right on the front side, made mistakes later, and lost.
Right,
and I think that's something we hear often is I can't lose, or I'm told I can't lose, or it's this pent up demand everyone's trying to fight for, because we have such minimal. We've never had inventory this low,
ever. Yeah,
ever. Not in my career, but not only not in my career, but never.
No, and since they've been recording the data, I mean, it's, the articles I've seen, Dallas Business Journal, great source for a lot of this data. It comes out, daily. They send out a couple of emails, and there hasn't been at least a week over the last several years that there isn't at least one or two articles about real estate. And just because of everything going on here, over 1,000 people moving here every day.
What is
right?
the moving? What was the number for how many people move here every day?
From July of 2019 to July of 2020, 1,080 people moved here every day from other parts of the country, West Coast, East Coast, wherever.
Just to DFW?
Just to DFW. No, not to Texas. To Texas.
To Texas.
Okay.
Texas, yeah.
So to Texas, over
To
1,000.
Texas.
So 1,080 people moved every day.
When you do the math, it was like, I can't remember the exact 300 and some odd thousand, but it came out to 1,080 per day from July 2019 to July 2020. But the trend that hasn't slowed down.
Right.
There's still people moving here, probably in that same,
Absolutely.
same range,
if not more.
Right.
Right. And so that is giving a false sense of security to us as investors.
Well, that many people moving here, they have to live somewhere, right? So there's this abundance of multifamily. There's a shortage of single family. When I say abundance of multifamily, there are a lot of new builds that are going up.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people think, they're not going to get not all those are going to get absorbed. They're going to get absorbed. Mm-hmm. I think they are. I don't know where the threshold lies, but the market will figure that out. But on the single family side, we have a shortage here.
Yes.
What is our
in Dallas Fort Worth?
We're under 30 days,
other
right?
areas of Texas.
What's
the
our
major
market
markets.
saturation?
Does anybody know what we're at? Days on market? Not days on market.
Market saturation.
Yeah,
so we're under a 30-day
we're under
supply,
30
right?
days.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
0.6 of a month.
Actually, I think I saw something. It was 1.4 months of supply.
We have a 1 point.
But I can't remember if they were looking at like all the major markets of Texas
right.
or just DFW, because the last report that I sent out for the one blast that we did was it showed Dallas Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston, and it was taking all those markets into consideration. The best thing to do, if you really want to dive into the data, the Texas A&M Real Estate Center is one of the best resources for it is. It's the foremost authority on real estate here in Texas.
What's your feel on the term rental grade rehab? I hate the term. I think it's a fake term. I don't think it should be a term. I think it's shooting people.
It's very subjective, and it's like in the eye of the beholder, right? So, that's just my interpretation of it, right? So rental grade means, well, we're not going to, you're not going to dress it up. It's going to be paint, carpet, or maybe some kind of lower grade synthetic flooring. You're not going to go with granite countertops, right? Or you're not, so that's kind of what I think of as rental. Rental grade is it's going to be a lower budgeted
So how does that affect the
Rehab.
investor's appraisal, though, or their outcome of the appraisal?
In an appraisal, they're going to take the condition of the property into account. So if you are comparing when you did your analysis, or you got an appraisal, or you ran your own comps, and you looked at all the best comps, the ones at the highest values, which most people tend to do that.
They
right?
never look at the low ones.
Right.
Always look at the highs.
So they're looking at all the three. You got to take 3 comps, right, to really to come up with a value. And then they look at all those, and then they go in and cut corners on the rehab, or say, well, I'm just going to rent it out, so I'm just going to do a rental grade rehab. Well, it's going to have a negative impact on the value, right? The value is going to go down because you didn't do you didn't put the right amenities in there. You didn't, if the market dictated, it's got to have hardwood flooring, it's got to have stainless steel appliances, and it's got to have, stone countertops.
And you went with carpet.
And you went with carpet, and you went with like the,
laminate countertops, not
laminate
Formica,
countertops,
right?
And then you put in like the cheapest appliances you could find.
Yeah, you did white instead of stainless steel,
right?
You're
going to have it's going to lower your value.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
I only bring this up because we run into this all the time when it comes to refinancing.
But so at face value, there's nothing wrong with the term.
No,
but
right.
there
have
is
to
an
understand
but you
what
absolutely have to understand that you're going to compare your rental grade rehab with not,
With
retail
retail,
grade
with retail,
rehab, right? Now, those might be the same thing to you. You might do all your rentals with hardwoods and granite, right? So I tell people this all the time. Look, when you're pulling comps, look at the photos of your comps.
Oh, absolutely.
Do not just look at the data, because the photos tell a million, you could, it's like all the details, right? So look at the flooring, look at the, how is it finished? And then if you want to hit that $100,000, you're going to have to do what they did. And people are, I think in this market, I can get away with doing a little bit, like cutting the corner. And it's like, no, you can't, because the first thing an appraiser does is look at the craftsmanship.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of first things they do. I mean, the first thing, but they are going to look at that. Yes,
yeah.
They're going to look at that and say, yeah, the quality is totally different, right?
Yeah, we see it all the time, where it's like they call me and Tony. Or on the flip side of that, Mike, have you ever had a client give you a budget with hardwood floors, but then chose to not do hardwood floors?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
And
yep. And sometimes it had an impact, and other times it did not.
Right.
It really depends on what's going on in the market. You get into like obviously there's some nuances in each one of these things that, every house is unique in its own right, right? Even though it may have a similar value to the next door neighbor's house or whatever. But what you do to it in terms of the quality and in terms of the finish out and in the rehab, like you guys do amazing rehabs, right? On the properties that you do. So you're going to get a premium value for that in most markets, especially in a market like we're in right now. Do you need to do that necessarily in a, on a rental property? Well, no, you don't. But know that, okay, when you go get your appraisal, it's more than likely not going to come in at
that retail number.
That retail number, because it's not retail. It's rental grade.
Yeah.
So that's a long way to say rental grade is different from retail.
And it's a long way to say match your comp, right? So if you're gonna buy it off of retail but keep it as a rental, don't expect a retail appraisal on the backside, right? So just mirror.
Totally. Yep.
I mean, you can't compare a Lexus to a Toyota. They're built the same way,
right?
But they ultimately have different valuations, right?
The reason why I bring this up, besides the fact that it was a definition, but was because appraisals, right? People don't understand that sometimes, and it always shoots them in the foot when you try to do that refinance.
Right. So, yeah, no, absolutely. But the other thing is, you could have done a nice rehab, but you had a tenant in there for a long time, and you go to refinance, and it's like the condition's not the same because they've been living in there for 10 years, right?
And
so
they didn't go check their house, and I've done it before. We do the appraisal and the refinance, and they found out that their vanities were cracked in half. That sinks were leaking.
They used like plastic for
flooring,
tile,
for tile.
as the tile around the tub, and So I think there's a lot of nuances to an appraisal and getting one for hard money. Do you have anything that you think? And I want to try to stay away from saying that lenders that do appraisals are better than lenders that don't do appraisals. That's not what the message is here. The message is
Right.
the message is that we do appraisals, and these are the reasons why we do appraisals, and that we believe
Yes.
this is the best way to evaluate a deal going into it, to have the best protection that you're going to get the best result.
I'm here to give information to investors who may not realize the value of
Right.
an appraisal without going into all the nuances of what goes on inside one, just highlighting the bullet points that we mentioned
Right.
of what's really important. That's, once again, I'll say it again. So, measuring the house, right? Looking at the right comps, and taking into account anything that's obsolescence or external influence or things that are going to impact the value in a negative way. Those are the things that you've got to look at in each one of these, in every deal that you do. The other thing that I see with investors, you reminded me of something, and when we were talking about the running comps and needing the ability to be able to do that yourself, is picking the highest comp. That's what a lot of new investors do. That they're like, well, I saw this one, it was 200,000, but all the others are in the 180s. Well, why is this one 200? Right.
Yeah.
So it could be an anomaly. It could be like, you don't know. So you got to dig a little bit deeper to see it. But you cannot pick that $200,000 comp and say that your house, oh, well, mine's going to be, the ARV's 200,000. No, it's not. Right. You've got to look at the other ones.
You got to blend it.
You got to blend it together, and make sure you're analyzing the right data. And you don't need to do that yourself. I mean, that's why we rely on an appraiser to do that. And you need to get close enough and then go verify and validate it, right? An appraisal is just a validation.
Yeah.
Right. That's why we get that, is to confirm that, hey, you got the right, you thought it was 200, and guess what? It's 200, or it's 198. So you're close enough.
Yeah.
So
Tony actually got us more money on a sale that we're doing by the appraisal. He used it for negotiation with the realtor, and actually, that was a great.
Absolutely.
It happens all the time. Where again, the tax data is only as good as the data. I mean, if you talk about how far back they go to pull the data,
Right.
I mean, they're not updated unless someone recently went and pulled permits and had the city measure it. Right? There's so many caveats to figuring out why tax doesn't have the right data. And you just want to know. You want to know going in that, hey, this is, unless you're someone who does the 10 or 15 often, consistent, right? Which
at the same time,
right? Yeah, at the same time. So it's definitely, there's definitely a lot of pros and cons.
you brought up something earlier. I don't think we dwelled on it enough. I think we just kind of glossed over like the online real estate platforms that provide values that give an estimate of what the value is worth without giving any, I mean, we all know who they are, right? And you go.
They
out there and
refer to them as AVMs, right? AVM, Automated Valuation Models.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great. Is that's what they refer to?
Yes.
Okay. So those models, they use algorithms to calculate the value based on comps. Like they're pulling data from the MLS. Or somewhere they're getting the data.
So that's what I was about to ask you. It's not always from MLS though. So that
it's a blend.
Yeah,
it's a blend.
Right.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
also is,
Right. So they're pulling data from MLS and from other sources and however they get the data. But I can't tell you how many times I've looked at the number and I'm like, it's so far off, right? Sometimes it's spot on, but other times it's like, it's off a little bit, right? So they're not going out, they're not measuring the house, they're not driving the neighborhood, they're not driving comps, they're not walking inside the house. I mean, all those things have an impact on how that value is going to turn out to be. Just going through the neighborhood and is way different than some computer model doing a desktop appraisal back in 08, 07, 06, or let's say before 08, before the crash. The automated underwriting system for the conforming loans, those are like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, had their automated underwriting process, did a lot of desktop appraisals.
Yeah.
And those desktop appraisals are wrong. And they're wrong because a lot of they're things that are not factored in, like
the yard.
Well, not the yard as much as like an addition that may have been put on the house.
Yeah.
Recently.
Or inferior condition, inferior.
Right. Condition is the big, it's the big one. right? Plus, it's like, how do they know that that square footage is the right square? They don't have an appraisal to
back it up.
To back it up. I mean, even if they had a previous one, you have to measure it again, right? There's something could have changed at the house that they don't know about. So my point is that you have to do your due diligence. Part of your due diligence is getting an appraisal. If you're an investor and you don't do your due diligence, then you're taking on a risk, and you're taking on a risk with probably the biggest, what I would consider the biggest investment that you're probably going to make is one in real estate. I don't care if you've leveraged it or not, because you didn't have to put down that much money to take it on, but your potential to lose money and lose a lot of money it goes way up when you don't do your due diligence. That's on the value, that's on the rehab.
There's so many people that get into real estate with so much passion and
which is good,
and excitement, and
also good.
Hope for freedom, which is all amazing.
Right.
But the fastest way to crush it all is to lose money
and
get hurt. But lose
don't
money.
Confuse passion with emotion, right?
And one pushes you forward, right? And emotion can be the erratic decision-making part, right? But passion should always push you forward.
Right.
Never let emotion sway your decision-making. But you can not just lose money. You can lose your future. You can lose your generation's future, right?
Yep.
You can lose assets. You can go bankrupt. Which is like a 10-year, hiccup, right? I mean,
the $100,000 example that we had,
Yeah.
that poor client.
Yeah.
That was all their money.
and
That was all their money.
And they who knows where they're at now, and
Right.
or how long is it going to take you to rebound from that, right?
Right.
So you have someone, if you get into a car accident and you lose your car, right, for, because it's in the shop. Well, imagine you get into a house accident and you lose your life savings, right? I mean, it took you 20 years to
the
get
car
there.
accident, you have insurance.
But there is no insurance
Right.
for making a bad decision in real estate.
That's right.
You have homeowners insurance.
Right.
You have title insurance.
Right.
But you don't have, I
screwed up this rehab.
There's no gap insurance on
Yeah,
real estate
there is
investment.
absolutely
There's
no gap insurance.
on
Maybe
it.
we should start a real estate gap insurance company. Oh man, that'd be.
Premiums would have to be really, really high.
But yeah, there's no insurance to prevent you from losing money in real estate, and that's something.
Well, there is, but it's you pay it in hiring the right people to go out and evaluate the value,
having the right team.
evaluate the scope of work, having the right team,
Yeah.
having the right lender. I mean, the right lender that's going to make sure that that your best interests are taking into account, not just the lender making money in the deal.
Right.
If you have to skip a bunch of due diligence processes, you got to wonder, like, is the lender looking out for my best interest, or are they just looking out for their own? Because they're requiring me to bring a bunch of money to the table. Oh, by the way, but I don't have to do an appraisal, so I'm going to save money on that. That's the wrong way to look at the deal, right?
A friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, says he loves it when people say, "Are we going to make money on this?" And he says, "Well, I'm not French, so we aren't going to do anything.
Right.
I might make money, the wholesaler might make money, the contractor might make money, but are you going to make money?" Right? And so it's not just about and I think that's something that I've learned being your friend and being my mentor through the years. It's like you have to know what you know and also know what you don't know, and let those people do what you don't know and know how to do. Let other people that know how to do that, right? So using people for what they're good at. You don't want to let your
They're
your
specialized.
you
specialized.
don't want to go to the dentist when you broke your foot, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you don't want to go to the foot guy to fix your broken tooth. It's the same thing. You need to use people, the experts. Let them do what they are
Don't
good
use
at.
my doctor as a private lender then.
No, actually, we could do a whole nother series on that. Your doctor can be a
Where to
private money
find a
lender.
private lender.
investmarkmortgage.com. Email Mike, email Paul, email Sean, email Nick, email me. We'd be happy to help you. Tune in. We always have more videos for you. Like, subscribe, share, and reach out to us. We'd love to hear your thoughts on hard money, appraisals, not getting an appraisal, some horror stories, so on and so forth. So I'm Tony.
I'm Nick. Thanks for sharing, guys.
That's Mike Hanna, and have a wonderful day.